just going to take 1 second here and make sure that we're up and running. We should be. I want to welcome you all. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a lot of new members at No More Excuses. We're always getting new members, it seems, and which is great. We want to try to add to those numbers over the next couple of weeks. And we'd like to really add to it. We're up to about 9,000 of all of you now, and it's really helpful to have that many people engaged when you're trying to do advocacy. You guys are just a powerhouse, and we'd love to see that number get up to, well, let's say double. We can shoot for the stars, right? We'd like to see 15,000 members, and then we could really start throwing our weight around. And first of all, I just want to take again a quick moment to welcome each of you and to say thank you so much. You may submit your questions, of course. I see some of them rolling in now. For those of you who are new to our entire group, thank you so much for joining us. Craig Reagan and I, mainly Craig, I kind of just came on into his world, and he allowed me to kind of run wild with this group. But this group started in 2019, almost 2 years ago now. And we really have made a lot of progress, but the simple fact is that we need to do more. Let me start by saying that tonight's video will all be in full HD. If you miss something, or if the stream flutters or for any reason, we'll have all these videos up. So don't worry about missing tonight. If you want to come back and let your friends view these, this video, we'll have it in full HD glory at some point. So don't worry if the stream drops a little bit. It seems like it's working pretty well. So if it does, though, not a big deal. So let's start now by bringing in the man, the myth, the legend, my dear friend, really the true founder of this group, Craig Reagan, who's done an amazing job starting this group 2 years ago now. Many of you haven't seen him in a while and would love to hear from him. So without further delay, let's go ahead and bring in Craig. Craig, what's up, man? How are you, buddy? Good to see you tonight.
I'm doing well. Thank you for all you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all you do for our group.
Oh, well, thank you, buddy. You know that everybody loves you. We know that, if things were different, you'd be doing exactly what I'm doing. You know, if things were different physically, you're a leader of this group. You started this group, and people follow you. They respond to you. So everybody out there, say hi to Craig. And as we get into tonight's program, tonight is really a recap. Okay, what I'd like to make clear is that we have a lot of new members. I think I said that earlier, and it's sometimes difficult to keep up with everything as we go along. And so what we want to do tonight is just a quick recap of where we've been over the last couple of years, and also the whole point of why we started No More Excuses, Craig. And of course, I'll let you chime in on this, but remember what we decided 2 years ago was that this was going to be about drugs in bodies. That simple. Go ahead and take it away, bud.
There are so many so-called efforts out there that never produce results, and they all have multiple excuses, and we're tired of excuses. Excuses do nothing for us.
That's right.
But prolong the inevitable. That's why I started No More Excuses, and it has developed beyond my biggest dreams, thanks to each and every one of you. Thank you for taking part, whether over the internet or phone or at one of our in-person events. Your help has been phenomenal. Thank you all.
Well said, my friend. And as we get into this, I just can't say thanks enough to you and to everybody out there. I know that the No More Excuses methodology may seem a little bit, brash to some people. Craig, you remember when we started this fight, we were called angry and
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know, divisive and all that. But the bottom line is that we had a model coming into this, and it was the HIV ACT UP movement, and we sought to mirror what they did and what they got done for their disease, another terminal disease, by the way, which in less than 3 years of their advocacy went from a death sentence to treatable, just like, buddy, as you know, we've seen cystic fibrosis now do with the approval of a single drug combination called Trikafta. We're going to talk much more about that. The differences between why ALS is stuck and the differences why other diseases now are leaving us in the dust. I just saw today that the multiple sclerosis people had a huge victory with the approval of another drug there as well. So ALS is underperforming. Let's just get that out of the way right up front. You and I... Go ahead.
Is the best kept secret in the history of medical fundraising. It has made a lot of people very comfortable for a long time. However, none of those were patients or victims of this disease.
Well, that's absolutely true. And, we're not bad people by nature is what I'm getting at, Craig. Each of us, we're living our lives. We don't go home and kick our dogs or our cats. We're good people. What we do at No More Excuses is a strategy. It's not a lifestyle. That's the first thing I tell people. We are not evil, mean people. We're just a group of individuals who see other diseases vastly outperforming ALS, and we demand action. And that is exactly what we seek. And we're going to go over all of the new drugs because, let's be honest, all the fluff and hype about how we want to have a cure someday and all that, it sounds great. But the bottom line is that a cure is still years down the road. We don't have years. The people on this feed, many of you don't have years. And we have months in some cases and a year or so. But look, here's the problem. It's not good enough. We've got to have access to these therapies. And first of all, the first step is knowing which drugs are attainable for us and which ones are just too far down the road. The thing that makes No More Excuses different, Craig, is the fact that, remember, when we set out a little while ago, well, I'll tell you what, why don't I just run this one more quick video here of our good friend Annie and I discussing what we were doing 2 years ago. This was 2 years now, almost to the month. It's about a month difference. Let's just listen to this really quick.
You've got to at a certain point begin to focus, on therapies. And Annie and I always say it's like this: if your house is on fire, you don't call the arson investigator first. You call the fire department. You put the fire out. And I think for too long, the focus has been on, let's try to find the why. And for a long time that was understandable. But our research and what we were doing focuses more on the last 5 years. In other words, the time between when that incredible amount of money was raised by people's generosity. Many of you watching this, thank you so much for what you did. And we want to help you hold the people accountable who control that money and to say, let's get therapies on the market, period. And Annie and I feel like there are 3 therapies right now that could be done quickly, efficiently. One of them could be done almost immediately. The other one is being done, except we obviously can't get to it yet. And the third one is more tricky, but it certainly works. So right now, I guess the point, Annie, and I'll let you jump in here, but the point we're making is that right now there are 3 therapies that, used together or alone, we want to make this bold statement that today, in 2019, in March of 2019, ALS, for the very first time, is stoppable. It is reversible in some cases, and we're going to prove all of this to you. This is not speculation, but the bottom line is right now is that ALS is no longer an untreatable or incurable disease.
All right, how about that? Right, 2 years ago, Craig, almost to the month, and everything in that video is still applicable. And by the way, those therapies are still very much on the table, but not nearly enough has been done for those 3. But Craig, now it's not just about 3 drugs. There are a handful or more drugs now that are attainable for people in our generation. And this week, we're going to go over each of these drugs and identify them, call them by name, tell you where they are in this process. And that is what is going to get us to the next step of ALS, which is making it a treatable chronic disease. And as we mentioned in the video, our members now who've been watching this develop over the last couple of years, you've each been seeing the proof. We told you we would prove it. Dr. Bedlack at Duke now has 48 or 49 ALS reversals. Now that's
49.
not 49. Now that's not because of any of the current crop of FDA therapies, of course. There's something going on there that he's trying to figure out. However, a couple of these drugs now have moved up the ladder, and a couple may have moved down the ladder in terms of what we can get to and maybe efficacy even. Now we see drugs like AMX35 moving up the ladder as it's starting to produce some really interesting results, Craig. You know, a 44% reduction in progression and thus death. And so for the first time in ALS, we do see new therapies entering the arena. And we also see therapies that should have been already in our bodies, sadly, as we've seen COVID now break almost every rule in the book. It's FDA Section 564, I think, is the actual code that allows the FDA to break these rules in times of crisis. Well, I submit to you and to everybody watching that ALS is a crisis. I have no idea why they think that COVID is so much more important, except the fact that it is obviously contagious. Before I move to the therapy list, do you want to say anything and add any color to that?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, man. Well, then, without further ado, let me just go over the initial list, okay? And here's what that kind of looks like. So the first page here we have, and these are not really in any particular order. We have arimoclomol, we have AMX35, of course, which has got an incredible run of news lately, of good news, frankly. We have radicava, our old friend, Craig. We had Neurone, of course, Tregs, and a new Treg process called RAPA. And the RAPA trial actually is now just starting at Mass General up in Boston, and we're going to have much more about that as soon as it becomes available. But I'll tell you, Craig, the Tregs and this RAPA thing, if that works out, for those of you who don't know, who are new to ALS, you heard in that intro video, Dr. Stanley Appel say that, quote, "We thought we would just slow ALS down, but we actually stopped the progression of ALS." Now, I want to, unfortunately, throw in the fact that that is 2017 when Dr. Appel said that, Craig, 2017. And
Right.
now as we start 2021, I think it's pretty clear that that drug has never received the success and the money, frankly. First of all, let's go over the quick result on that drug. 100% success rate in the first trial. Yes, it was only 3 people, I know. But again, we can make excuses for ALS all day long. Craig, how crazy is it that in 2017, 3 out of 3 people had their progression stopped? Totally not slowed, stopped.
The pace of our disease is much quicker than the pace of science.
Great point.
Unfortunately.
Absolutely, and we're going to see a tweet from Dr. Hahn here in a moment that says exactly that. And so, guys, Tregs has been grossly underfunded. Craig and I sat across the table from ALS Association Management. Remember that? In 2017 in June. And we hashed it out with them. And we said, why are you not funding this man? This guy has a procedure that is 100% successful. And I don't even think at the time we knew it was all 3 of those people. And by the way, Tregs is on the list for this week. I hope to have at least 2 people who are very close to that procedure. One of them is dealing with COVID right now, and I hope she's okay. but we'll find out more on that later.
He's
But
out at the hospital now.
oh, good, good, good. Out of the hospital, you said? Discharged.
Yes.
Oh, great. That's great news. Okay. So then let's. Craig's playing with his daughter there, I think. So okay, let's go now. Let's look at the second page of this list, guys.
What about?
Okay, go ahead, bud. Go ahead.
No, it was on the second page.
Don't get ahead of me now. I have to come over and whoop some Aggie butt, man. All right, so we've got riluzole, however you want to say it, the old standby 1995 drug, copper ATSM or CUATSM, macedoninib, which is a mast cell cancer drug for dogs, believe it or not, which is perfect for you, Craig, you old dog. We've got tofersen, of course, and the FUS ASOs. Now, let me just throw in something real quick on that. The genetic drugs have really picked up pace. Tofersen is showing incredible promise, and I'm very excited. I think we're going to have somebody who's involved with that trial on this week as well. So if you're one of the rare people who has a genetic variant of ALS, things are looking good, at least for the SOD1 right now. Some of the other ones are not responding yet like we'd hoped, but the tofersen appears to be doing very, very well. And it could affect between 250 to 500 people across the U.S. with that particular SOD1 type. But we'll have more on that. Again, we're just going over the quick list. And then the last one is interesting. It's called NSI 566 and other things like AstroRx. And I want to be clear, this is not a complete list. Okay, we're going to have, I couldn't get them all in there, otherwise they'd be teeny tiny. But we're going to have a lot more than that this week to go over. That's just kind of the master list, if you will. And so, Craig, which one of those, let me ask you before we go to the next one, which one of those do you seem most excited about? What do you feel like you're looking forward to maybe getting to?
I have felt since 17 and that Neuron is our best and closest option.
Yeah.
It's had the best result.
Yep.
And it's closest to the finish line.
Yep.
We are just having trouble getting it over the finish line.
Yeah, I agree. I really do. I totally agree with you, bud.
I would like to say there was someone who posted on No More Excuses recently about metformin.
Okay.
If you could go in, whoever you are, and give us an update on what you're seeing from taking metformin. I'm curious to hear it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then I know some other people are even taking other things as well. And we're not going to get too much in to the holistic side, although I think we will probably touch up on the Deanna protocol and some of the others. I mentioned Dr. Bedlack from Duke earlier, who now, as Craig correctly stated, 49 reversals. As far as I know, the only thing that all of those people have in common are the fact that they were on plant-based diets. That's the only thing that I'm aware of that has really helped them. Let's start by taking a quick look, guys. This is what all the hubbub is about lately. This new drug AMX35, which guys, it's an interesting drug. I mean, there's no question about that. It's a powdered drug. It is a combination of two things, and we've been over this. Over and over this again on our website. It's a combination of sodium phenylbutyrate or Bufenil and TUDCA. Now, TUDCA is available right over the counter. And again, I'm not going to go into each of these drugs now. This is kind of a recap of where we've been over the last couple of years. But this is actually what it looks like right here. This is actually it. And this is what the patients in the trial received, which is pretty cool, right? I mean, and the reason, and I know a lot of this writing is really small, and I'm very sorry for that. Because everything will be in HD, I promise you. I will post all the pictures from this presentation so you can review them. But this is a chart, guys, that shows a really big problem that we have frankly, right now in ALS is the fact that there has been almost no progress. If you look, the top left on the left side is 1892. The top right is 2019. So, guys, we have now, that's way more math than I can do. I mean, it's 140 years, let's say, 140 years. And we essentially, Craig, have the same exact result, the same outcome. And I mentioned earlier our buddies from HIV and AIDS. And a lot of you may remember this. I was old enough. I was, in, I think, junior high, early junior high. And these guys and girls kicked butt. They went to D.C. They actually protested, and they got AZT approved. And it wasn't that great of a drug, guys. It was pretty toxic. But this is an interesting comment. I want to read this. The drug's approval, meaning AZT, remains controversial to this day. But when in a world where treatment options are so far advanced, it can be hard to imagine the sense of urgency and the social pressure permeating the medical community at the time. AIDS was an impending wave that was about to crash on the shores, and having at least one drug that worked was seen as progress. I think that's remarkably reminiscent of how we see ALS today, Craig, although we really don't have much of anything, as you know, Riluzole and Radicava. We're not here to bash anything. We're not going to do that this week.
Is very empty.
Yeah, exactly. The toolbox is incredibly empty. And as our friend Michelle Lorenz knows, who many of you know, who's been leading the 8662 fight, she loves to say this from a general. That's a really popular saying. It's actually the guy who I believe got what did he do with the VA? I think he got ALS covered as a service-related disease. A general, and he said we need to arm the arsenal of ALS. We need an arsenal, a weaponry for ALS, and we don't have that, Greg. We don't have it. We've got 2 drugs that are designed for the ALS to slow ALS progression. Some people say 3 or 4. We only count 2 at No More Excuses: Riluzole and Radicava. That's it. Okay. Everything else is strictly palliative in nature. There's some debate over whether Nuedexta or whatever can slow down bulbar impairment, and maybe not. I don't know. Some people do feel that way, but if it helps somebody, great. So let's say it's maybe 3 at the most, but it's really 2. So let's go back now to June of 2019, Craig. This was you and I. For those of you out there who don't know, we've actually protested this terrible disease twice. We've been to D.C. This group and these members, they put their money where their mouths are. They really do. They back things up. When we say we're going to protest, we do it. And you'll see in a minute, our body bag protest in the middle of a pandemic was very special and very successful. This was us in June of 2019. And what's really sad, Craig, is that a lot of these faces are no longer with us now. As we scroll through these pictures, and there's you and Nancy, and that was a fun weekend. I remember we had a little incident with the van. Remember that? That was awesome.
Yeah.
And guys, it's the shame that a lot of these people are still not with us. Vice actually came and shot this whole thing, and we thought, didn't we? We thought that we were going to get a full-length documentary, and then something happened. The HBO and Vice's contract fell apart, and it ended up being a disaster, and we never did it. We're trying to get the footage because it's really good footage, but we're working on that. I don't know. We'll see. But as we scroll through these pictures, I just really want everybody to see our good friend. Look, there's Mark Berardi sitting there. There's you, and unfortunately, right over your right shoulder, Craig, or our left on the screen here is Elsie Johnson. Yeah. Terrible situation.
Jeff Shutter, Peggy Palmer Hope. I may be forgetting others.
I think we are, but yes.
And I apologize, but everyone that attends these events is very appreciated.
Absolutely.
I know it's not easy to travel with ALS, but your attendance means the world to our fight.
Absolutely. No question about it. as we go through these, there's a couple of more here. This was our second protest, Craig. This was fun. We had a lot of fun at this. We went to D.C. in the middle of a freaking pandemic to protest, to protest ALS, and we really thought at this moment that we had an executive action coming that we wanted that would have funded phase 3 expanded access. And unfortunately, the weekend, just hours from this, when this picture was taken, the George Floyd thing hit and exploded, and that was really the end of our push for the executive order for ALS.
What
And
they
it's really a
can't
shame.
see is in that photo, the White House is directly behind us.
You're right.
They
You're absolutely
are
right.
within megaphone distance.
Absolutely. And Craig, this picture was us again, June of 2019, speaking directly
Yep.
with the FDA. We're sitting across the table from Peter Marks and Janet Woodcock, both 2 director level positions, one of whom is now the director of the FDA, by the way. Temporary, we hope. I'd like to see her go full time, but that's not our decision, obviously. So this is you on the left, Mark
There's
Bedwell.
one I forgot. Dr. Latore also.
Thank you so much, by the way. That's exactly right. He's actually right over Mark's head there. That's Dr. Randy Latore and his wife, who put together an amazing video of doctors talking about some of these drugs and the need for urgency. And that's, of course, Sharon Bradley on the right there, sitting next to me. And Sharon's amazing. Her husband, Craig, as you know, he was one of those 3 people in the T-Reg trial that had a phenomenal result. His progression stopped, and unfortunately, when the trial ran out, he wasn't able to get more of that drug and became severely progressed. He's still alive with us, and I understand he loves to day trade, and he's still active. He's probably enjoying all this crazy stuff that's going on the last few days, I'm sure.
He's probably watching us right now.
Probably
Hello,
so.
Larry.
What's up, Larry? And then, of course, I could not do this without just the terrible situation of Elsie Johnson. And that's her husband. They're just in the right edge of the frame. And, Craig, I don't even know what to say about this.
Horrible.
It's horrible. It's just absolutely terrible, terrible, terrible. Time ran out for these people, and it's a crime. It should never be this way. When we have drugs that are safe and effective, and that's why people are members of this group. You can either, the way I see it is you can either wait on these big groups to push forward, or you can get involved and push forward yourself, and thankfully there have been some new groups come in. We're not in we're not in the Westminster Dog Show with just one entry anymore, Craig, are we? With the addition of IMALS and some of these other groups now, it's really, you would have thought, caused the ALS Association to have to raise its game. And honestly, it's kind of gone the other way. It's dug in and become even more stubborn, surprisingly. All we wanted was change. You remember when we met with the ALS Association, and this is critical for people to know because we're doing a recap. And Craig and I sat across the table from their top 2 or 3 executives, CEO Colonique Ballas, Brian Frederick, and who else was there? I can't remember. So, and Neil Thacker. And when we ask these basic questions, like what's your strategy? How do you pick drugs that are the most promising drugs and decide how to fund them? And they just look stupefied, Greg. I don't know any other way to say it. They're darn good at raising money. That's what they do. As far as running the ALS thing and strategizing the next moves, as we've seen now, there are other people that seem to be doing quite a bit better job of that, namely IMALS and others again.
I want to ask you, Mike, to share your Titanic analogy with the group. We're on the Titanic.
Sure.
We have hit the iceberg. The band is playing and the ship is going down. But they don't want us to use the lifeboat because they may not be safe. So you came up with that analogy, and I think it's fantastic, a fantastic analogy.
Well, I wish it wasn't true, but it really is. You know, to
It
touch in
is.
on what Craig said there, you know, it is true. I mean, we have these lifeboats out here for people who have already been given a death sentence. We're going down, like Craig said. That band is playing, like everything's normal. And can you imagine? Can you imagine saying, "I don't want to get in that lifeboat," meaning some of these drugs. I'll just go down with the ship because the FDA hasn't said that these drugs are safe for me yet. I mean, that's literally what's happening right now, and we've already lost a lot of people. And it makes no sense to most people. I mean, it's crazy, buddy. But moving
It
back,
doesn't make sense to us, and you and I deal with this crap every day.
so true.
For the life of us, we cannot figure out why there hasn't been action.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And let's look at some of the people involved here. And I want to be clear
There's
that
Dr. Woodcock
yep,
and Peter Mark.
sure is. For those who don't know out there,
Andy at the end.
yep, that's Annie at the end for our newer
Dr.
members.
Bennett.
Yep, Dr. Bob Sennett, just see his head there. But this was 2019, June, again, at our first protest. That's Peter Marks, kind of in the center right of your screen there with his hand on his chin. And then next to him is Janet Woodcock. And Dr. Woodcock is now the interim director of the FDA. She's got the whole thing right now, Craig. And what I like about that is that she knows ALS. She's on the record quite well, and you can see this in our documentary, Pals, which is something I would invite all of you to watch if you haven't yet. I'll put the link at the bottom. It's a fantastic, very short film made by Matt Sennett, Dr. Bob Sennett's son, explaining all of this and some of these drugs. But yeah, Dr. Woodcock, we have hopes that look, we all are on pins and needles right now about what the next step for these drugs are, including AMX35. It's not just about Neuron, guys. The FDA could, in theory, decide to bypass phase 3 for AMX, or it could choose to make it do a phase 3 trial. And I really don't know which way that battle's going to go because the data was mixed on 35. It missed its secondary endpoints. And as you know, according to some people out there, when drugs miss endpoints, they don't get approved. Now, it did meet its FRS endpoint, and we're going to talk more about this. But that's one drug the FDA could act on right now, any day.
Right.
I mean, we don't know. I mean, some people...
And the unique situation is one half of that combo is and has been for years FDA approved.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. You're right. It's TUDCA, TUDCA. And again, don't worry about writing all this down, guys.
Butyrate is approved.
Sorry. Yeah. My bad. Sorry, I got confused. Yeah, the sodium phenylbutyrate or Bufenil. And we're going to have a whole night on that. It's Thursday night. I believe AMX35 is. We're going to have somebody back from the trial to discuss how he's still doing. And for those of you who are new, again, our YouTube channel is ALS News Now on YouTube. I've got dozens of videos on there, guys, of proof of people that believe that they're doing better with ALS. And some of them are very convincing, and we'll have more of those. But for now, it's AMX35. We could hear something any day, Craig, about that drug, which would be amazing. And then, of course, I know the big one. We're all waiting to hear what the FDA is going to do with Neuron. If they're going to suggest a BLA, and I'm going to show you what a BLA is here just in a moment. But guys, there are two drugs right now. There are two drugs sitting at the FDA right now that, if approved, could transform this disease quickly for us, not for another 3 or 5 years. For a lot of us, not all of us, unfortunately, because the time has now ticked on. It's 2 years later since we started this fight. And you know, Craig, everything we kind of were saying back then, I hate to say it, the warnings we were giving and all that, you know, a lot of those predictions have come true. Sadly, the problem is we just don't have the access. That part never came to fruition.
Right.
So there are two drugs right now. If you have ALS right now, and you know, many of us do, have hope and join the fight. I see a lot of people out there on some of these sites, wonderful sites, care sites like Patient and Caregivers, great website on Facebook. Actually, that guy used to live right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Dan Dioski was his name. And I see a lot of wonderful people suffering from ALS on these Facebook pages that have no clue what's going on right now in this group. None. And I ask each of you, please go out and let's try to bring these folks up to speed. Because I think if they knew what was happening, they would fight. But you see, Craig, and we're going to talk about this as well, it's called defeatism, right? We've been told as ALS patients to go home and die from day one. That's what we all get. And in some cases, you'll hear later, we hear that from a doctor's assistant. They don't even have the guts sometimes to even tell us. And it's terrible. There's no option. So there are two drugs right now, guys. Two. I'm going to do my Nixon here. Two drugs.
Let me point out something
Go ahead, bud.
to the audience that may not always be clear. Mike Henson does have ALS.
Thank you.
He does have a dog in this fight. Fortunately, his is much slower progressing than many people. So just because he can talk and type,
Right.
do not be confused. He absolutely does have ALS. He just is fortunate to be less affected thus far.
Well, and thanks for pointing that out, Craig, because I get that a lot. You know, what are you doing? What do you do? Well, I mean, if you saw my legs, they look ridiculous. I mean,
Right.
you know, I have ALS. Trust me, guys. It just has affected me differently. Many of your legs are way stronger than mine. So that's a good point. Thanks for pointing that out, because I do get that a lot. Some people think that, what is this dude doing here? You know, he doesn't look like he needs any of this stuff. And trust me, I do. I'm in the same boat as everybody else. So thanks for pointing that out, buddy. That's a great point. Very fair point. As we move through here, again, guys, this is what we're fighting for. These are the people who have not made it to this point. Okay. I can't stress enough, that these angels, as we call them, these are people who, oops, it looks like I forgot to load the second picture. There was two pictures, or 2 pages full of them here, but these are the people who have not made it, Craig. And it's just, you know, it's got to stop. We've got to be in a big hurry here. We've got to be in a bigger hurry. A lot of people have gone through clinical trials to get us to this point. Thank you to everybody who does clinical trials, because it's very critical that we do these trials. Those of you in the AMX trial and the Neurone trial and the Biogen trial. Craig, I don't know if you knew this, but the Biogen trial, you have to have 22 lumbar punctures for that sucker. 22.
I did not know that.
I had about roughly a dozen as part of the Neurone trial. And this is what people are going through to do this science, guys. Dirty, nasty airports. Obviously, this is pre-COVID. But a big thank you to everybody who has been in these clinical trials, because it's not easy to do that. It's not easy to go through these. And as this week, we're going to focus on new drugs every night. But I just want to say thank you to the clinical trial people. It's critical that we have these trials. We're going to talk briefly at a point about this placebo, why we have placebo in ALS. It's terrible. And we'll go over things like the FRS score as well. So this is, you mentioned this earlier, Craig. Something about this is that one thing Stephen Hahn tweeted, and I hope you guys can see this. If not, again, this will be in HD. But he said it exactly right when COVID started, blowing everything up. He said, sometimes science moves faster than the regulatory process. And in times of public health emergency like COVID-19, it's paramount that we be flexible in getting potentially life-saving investigational medicines to patients who need them most. Needless to say, there's another disease over here, guys. Hello, ALS, right?
Yeah.
And it's incredible that we have to deal with ALS as it is, and then we have to deal with, things like this, where We've got media who's banging on the door complaining about profiteers and all this other ridiculous stuff in ALS. It's just so dumb.
Rising suicide pisses me off.
Well, it does, and it's a real shame that that's what we have to deal with. And the reason we battle between science and patient, right? Patients want access. Scientists want undeniable proof times 10. We have a big problem in ALS, and many of you who are new probably don't know about this, but our trials in ALS are graded on something called the ALS FRS R score, and many of you have taken these scores at your local doctor's office, and all the trials are graded based on this. And as you know, it's subjective. So Craig, how did you cut your food today? I mean, better than yesterday? I mean, probably. Or maybe not. I mean, how and these are real questions, by the way. I'm going to put up a diagram here, and I know it's small again. I'm sorry. I'll make it bigger in the recording part. But these are the questions. There's 12 questions, guys. ALS FRS R score revised. 12 questions: speech, salivation, swallowing, handwriting, cutting food again with just cutting food again. 5B. Dressing and hygiene, turning over in bed, walking, climbing stairs, dyspnea, which is breathing difficulty, and these words are, I'm not a doctor obviously, but oropnia, which is again something that happens with bulbar affect, and then finally respiratory insufficiency. So there's 12 items on here, Craig. Now let me point to one of these, and let me show you how variable this can actually be. And this creates a huge problem in grading clinical trials, as unfortunately we're dealing with right now. Let's talk about turning in bed. Here's your options: normal, somewhat slow and clumsy, but no help needed; can turn alone or adjust sheets, but with great difficulty; can initiate but not turn or adjust sheets; and then zero's helpless. I guess you could work your way through that. And then the one about eating and cutting food, but the problem is every single point matters hugely. To give you an idea, when drugs are graded, they're graded as how much how much they slow down that little chart, and 1 point can make the difference between pass and fail. And this is the best we've got in ALS, which is why, as we've always said in No More Excuses, it's not good enough to grade these drugs. We need more. Clinical results should be taken into account. Anecdotal evidence, the totality of the evidence, whatever you want to call it. Now we have, for the first time, thankfully, some biomarker data that's come from this new trial, the NEURONE trial, and maybe, good Lord, maybe we could actually have a surrogate endpoint for ALS. Because guys, this is what you need to understand, is that ALS, these trials fail a lot of times, and I'm sure we've lost drugs. We may have lost drugs that would help a little bit, but not enough to be graded as a success, which is terrible. That's a total failure of the system.
There is inherent subjectivity in the ALS FRS scale.
Yes.
That as much as the medical profession would like to say it's consistent, is not completely consistent.
Absolutely. In fact, let's listen to just a short little video here. This is courtesy of Everything ALS, and I think it's Everything ALS, and of course Michelle and her friends, and also actually I think it really came from our friend Team Saxena, Mayuri, and her brother Mayank. So let's listen to this, and this explains it really well why the FRS score is kind of backfired a little bit, and why we need something better, and why we need to think about ALS drugs in a different light than, say, oncology and something. This is an oncologist kind of talking about the ALS drug approval system. Here you go.
My name is Suchit Patel. I am an MD PhD. I have a PhD in neuroscience. I am a practicing radiation oncologist. As a physician, and also as somebody who's been directly impacted with one of my close friends having been diagnosed with ALS, why the bill makes sense to me. You know, there was a recent trial that Michelle mentioned at the beginning of this that failed to meet its endpoint and was declared a failed trial, and yet had 35% of patients that had an objective response. As a practicing oncologist, if there was an oncology trial that had a 35% objective response rate, we would be rejoicing for a rare oncologic condition. That would be why this has been so difficult in ALS, is because of the rarity of the disease and how trials have to be structured for a disease that is universally fatal and rapidly progressing. I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer about trying to get a drug in the hands of patients that need it most, that could have potentially life-altering impact in a way that's safe and administered by experts that are already doing that in a phase 3 clinical trial site. That would be an amazing trial. And yet for ALS, we declare that as a failed trial. And that's only because of the structural limitations of a clinical trial.
All right, Craig. So there you go, right? He said just because it's a structural limitation there. Now that guy has a PhD in neuroscience and is a practicing oncologist. I mean, I think I'd take his word. I think he's qualified to make those assessments. You and I are just rednecks from Texas and Oklahoma, brother. We don't know anything about this disease, I guess. But
Right.
we just heard the man right there. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Sounds pretty clear to me. So that's a big problem we have right now. And I pray that in the future that we don't lose drugs because of the FRS score system. And the scientists are addicted to it. I'll be honest with you. It's not a good measure of true ALS performance. As patients, we know that. Heck, my score varies, Craig. I don't know about you, but it varies day to day, maybe by as much as 1 or 2 points. And that can be devastating for a clinical trial. So
Yeah.
you have to look at these things long term. How do people look, in other words? You know, don't look at it like from an FRS score. Let's look at people who have had drugs in their body.
Right.
And we're going to hear from Greg Cantor again this week from AMX 35. And I hope to hear good things from him. But I take his word. You know, he's a patient. That's the best source of information in my mind. How is somebody feeling? How's their progression? That to me, combined with the FRS score, would be the right way to do this. And I think, frankly, it should be about 50-50, honestly. Patients are qualified to tell our doctors how we feel and how we're doing.
Absolutely.
Day to day, an FRS score, it varies greatly. So, you know, I mean, that's another issue that we face. And so as we move forward here, let me see here where I'm at. If you have anything you want to add there before I go to the next thing, but we're going to talk a little bit now. Go ahead.
I do. If your doctor will not listen to you, take your word of the way you're feeling, of the things you are seeing in your body, pack your shit and walk out or roll out, whatever the case may be,
Absolutely.
and tell them exactly why you are leaving.
Yep.
We are our own best advocate, period.
Absolutely. And Craig, that's why we started this group. That's actually why we changed the name to ALS Watchdogs, because there's got to be somebody that's watching these things like this next slide I'm going to put up. This is a letter that we wrote to the FDA asking for information about some of these issues. And we're going to, we'll go over, some of the results of these things. But we're not here, guys, just screaming at somebody. We're actually working behind the scenes. We write a lot of letters. We have a petition for copper ATSM. We'll go over that this week with now right at 200,000 signatures on it. And you've seen our numerous media reports and through with you guys' help, this is a group that is designed to push and to knock on the door nicely. And if the door doesn't open, then we knock a little harder and eventually we try to kick it down. I mean, we're losing too many people, Craig. I mean, I'm so tired of watching, you sit there and get worse while we have these drugs and while people are sitting at home, And they don't mean, it's not that they mean us ill will. They're not bad people. I just don't think they truly understand the devastation that this disease causes people. If they could just live with you for one day, I really don't think we'd even be going over this stuff anymore, frankly. I mean, it's, they just don't get to see it, and that's our problem. So what is the next step? What happens? Well, let's take a drug like Neuron, for example. The next step is you have to file for approval, and you can only do that really. I mean, you can file if you want, but usually the FDA will, kind of work with companies, and like it's doing right now with AMX 35 and Amylyx to signal whether or not they think they've got a case. This is what the BLA is called. It's the Biologic License Application process, and this is where everything eventually ends up for new drugs. I mean, this is what drugs need. They need to be approved by the FDA, right? And so that's what the next step is for some of these drugs. That's what Amylyx now, I believe, is discussing with the FDA to try to figure out if they can move forward. And it would be unprecedented, Craig. I don't know. I'm not an FDA, what do you call it, policy wonk or whatever they call them. I don't know exactly how many drugs they've approved straight through phase 2 without doing a phase 3, but I'm assuming it's happened when things are really good and really curative. But with mixed data, is that likely to happen? I don't know. The good news is, though, is by watching this channel, you've known for a while that you can get AMX 35. You can already do it. You can, just like Craig said, if your doctors won't prescribe this for you. And one of the things we are going to have this week on AMX night is we're going to have a letter signed by a doctor that you can hand your doctor, and it has the data they need on it to make the decision. As Craig said, if your doctor won't prescribe you an off-label prescription for ALS, for an FDA-approved drug that has clear data, signals of efficacy, you need to pick up and run or roll or drive out of there or whatever you need to do and find a new doctor, because there are plenty of doctors out there that will do it. We even heard one of the best doctors in the world for ALS the other night, I won't mention his name, but said it on a podcast. He's doing it right now. He's prescribing it, and he's actually writing letters to cover insurance or to help insurance too. So it's doable. Do not take no for an answer, guys. Push. And this is the thing. This brings me into my next subject here, is ALS defeatism. ALS defeatism is real, and it's a problem that we face, Craig, very much so in ALS. Defeatism is a term for a way of thinking from the moment you're diagnosed until the moment you die with ALS. Everything is about being defeated. There's no hope. The doctors know it. The way they talk to you, the way they look at you. We've all experienced this thing. It's almost medical discrimination to some extent, Craig. The way they treat us, the way they're condescending in many cases. Like, how dare you come in and present me with data that says I should prescribe you a drug because I didn't know about it, right? I mean, we've all seen this, and that is not going to fly anymore. There's some really intelligent people out there, and just because people get ALS, Craig, doesn't mean that they've suddenly forgotten what 1 + 1 is. It doesn't work that way. People who were successful in life before and who were smart and ran businesses and did these things and were good parents, and they're still that way. They just have a body that's failing. They're still good decision makers, right? And to be honest with you, Craig, a lot of times patients are more informed about this stuff, way more informed about this stuff than doctors are in many cases.
Amen.
And so that's why people are members here, because they learn this stuff. So defeatism is real. I want to show you one organization that just put this letter out. It's an amazing letter. This is from the Alzheimer's Association. Again, I know it's small. I promise I'll put it up. But look at this. This is the CEO of the Alzheimer's Association coming out swinging like an axe murderer here to try to fight for his patients. And look at what he says, Craig. It's about 3/4 of the way down. We believe the publicly released scientific data, the crushing realities faced by individuals and families living with Alzheimer's, and no approved treatment for the underlying disease, support FDA approval of aducanumab, accompanied by a phase 4 post-marketing surveillance study. If approved, aducanumab would be the first available treatment to potentially change the progression of Alzheimer's, not just the symptoms, for millions of people facing this disease today. We will continue to advocate, driven by science, yes, science, on behalf of our constituents, and I'll share important developments as the FDA review goes through. Now, buddy, if that's not getting your money's worth from a CEO, I don't know what is. Because the data on that was mixed as well, I believe. I'm going to verify that. But we're in a very similar situation with another, we won't mention the name here, but you know what I'm talking about. Kind of looking at it, it's going through the FDA right now. That is swinging for the fences right there, and that is going to bat for your patients, saying, look, this drug may not be perfect. That's fine, we'll take it. Get it out there. And by the way, that comment about the phase 4 post-marketing trial, and another word for that is a post-marketing commitment. Guess what, guys? That is exactly how Radicava was approved, and that is exactly what one of the top ALS doctors in the world suggested for another very popular drug right now. I'll just say it, I'll just leave it there. A phase 4 trial can be done after approval to verify efficacy. There's nothing to lose with approving these drugs as long as they're safe. That is what we've got to have. And that's what we need, frankly. We need somebody like that right there, swinging for the fences. And you know, that's an amazing letter. Here it is, Craig, right here, in a little bit larger print, so you guys can see it. Crushing realities. Quote: "We believe the publicly released scientific data, the crushing realities faced by individuals and families living with Alzheimer's and no approved treatment for the underlying disease, support FDA approval of aducanumab, accompanied by a phase 4 post-marketing surveillance study." That is as strong a language as you're ever going to see from the CEO of an advocacy organization, and I salute them.
Wish we had someone from also fighting like that for us.
Me too, buddy. Me too. And look, when I said earlier that we were being left in the dust and with ALS, and I think my camera battery is about to die here, so if it does, don't worry, it's going to go dark for a minute. I'll just switch over to a slide or something so you know what's going on. But here, and as a matter of fact, we'll just do that now. Okay, cystic fibrosis has kicked butt. It is now worth, Craig, with approximately the same number of patients, $4 billion. Cystic fibrosis, $4 billion. ALS is worth about $100 million, thereabouts. If ever there was a wider disparity in the way things are treated and the way patients and the way success is viewed, that's it. As a matter of fact, as I do change this battery, I want you to see this right here. Look at what's going on here, guys, with this cystic fibrosis drug. I mentioned this earlier, right? This is called Trikafta. This was a single drug that, well, it's actually a combo drug. It's a combination drug that totally revolutionized the world for people with cystic fibrosis. Now, Craig, I interviewed one guy, Bobby Mahomes, with cystic fibrosis, and he was on the ropes, brother. I mean, that interview is on my YouTube channel, or ours, if you'd like to see it. It's fascinating to see the difference between how they handle their disease and how we handle ALS. Bobby Mahomes was down to like 100 pounds, I think is what he said, 90 pounds. On the ropes, just about dead. I mean, he had nothing left in the tank. One drug, and now he is completely, well, I say not completely, but he's nearly recovered, going to start a family, going to move on. And the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, guys, this is shocking, but they actually sent out a letter suggesting to their patients, guys, get ready for retirement again. You need to start thinking about retirement. And all we ever see for ALS is fill out a free will. Now, I don't know if there's any wider or better illustration of defeatism again, Craig, going back to that term, defeatism. I salute the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation and what they have done. It's truly amazing, my friend, and that, you know, it should be exactly the same way in ALS. This was it. Look at this, Trikafta, 90% successful in cystic fibrosis. Now, Some would say it should have been approved because it was almost curative or whatever. Look, that's only one drug. They already had, Craig. The Cystic Fibrosis Foundation has funded almost, I think, close to a dozen therapies that are approved for cystic fibrosis. But this was the magic one, man. They got the first one. They kept banging away at it. And by the way, the first drug did not hurt their fundraising. It helped. Because when people get excited about fundraising because they're showing progress, then they'll get involved. Do you wonder, has anybody ever wondered why ALS is still bringing in the same amount of money, roughly, as it was before the Ice Bucket Challenge? A little bit more, not much, a few $1 million. But the books are all on our website, the 990s. There's been almost no growth in ALS, and it's because there's been no success in ALS. And not going to go too deep into that. We are. This is the introductory night, but I want new people to understand what some of the issues are that we face. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Craig, before we move on to the next thing here?
No.
Okay. Well, jump in if you feel like you need to. So I want to show you all this now. This is interesting. Going back to defeatism, guys, we can have all the therapies in the world. If we can't get to them, it doesn't matter. Craig was exactly right. This is the kind of thing we see. Now, I don't ever post names or anything unless they're on Facebook, publicly or whatever. So I want you all to know that, okay? But this is what's happening to Sally here is very common. It's happening to a lot of us on our website anyway, on No More Excuses. Look at this. I asked my neuro for a prescription for sodium phenylbutyrate. She said it's not FDA approved for ALS, so didn't write me one. I wonder if my primary care physician would. Like you said, Craig, what should that person do?
Bag their shit and leave.
I would have said it a little differently, but
doctor tells you that, make sure they know that you're aware of the Medical Freedom Act of 1983
oh, you're going legal
that
on me, huh?
allows doctors to write drugs off label, meaning for a purpose other than which it was FDA approved. Let's take, for instance, Viagra. Viagra was first intended to treat blood pressure,
Yes.
I believe. But in the course of testing, they figured out, well, it might not be helping my blood pressure, but let me tell you what it does help. And lo and behold, that's what it got approved for. But I digress. Every drug has side effects. Some of those side effects may be beneficial. And the doctor has the legal freedom to prescribe you anything for whatever reason if it's FDA approved. Period.
Couldn't agree more, man. Could not agree more with you. And this kind of goes back to, again, just a mentality that these doctors have. Most of them, and you know this, guys, I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, but most of the time they've already written us off, right? I mean, we sense that, we feel that, we're human beings, and it's not right. It's not the way it's supposed to work. They should be doing everything they can that's safe to give you a shot. And AMX 35 is one of those drugs that could be done and that you can get right now if you want. So, think about that. We're not doctors. I'm not suggesting that you do it. We're just here to give you information, okay? But there's also
if you want it, it's your right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's your right. So there's a couple things here. There are groups too. Like, and I'm going to show you one here in a minute. Defeatism is a big problem in ALS as we talk about these therapies, and the reason why it takes so long to get to each one of these. It's hard to believe, but not everybody is really on the same page as patients. Okay, there are groups out there like rare diseases. NORD is one, and Craig, that we've been fighting for HR 8662, and we're going to talk about that just briefly here next. But we've also there's another bill that will be eventually fought for after we get the first one done, called PPA. It's like a conditional approval bill. Now that's going to have to go through the Senate and modify the FDA's charter, which is not going to be an easy thing to do. But we can do it if we bond together and we fight. But our own one of the rare disease organizations called NORD. I mean, look at this, Craig. They're concerned. They're deeply concerned about the PPA. Deeply concerned. Now, why would they be deeply concerned, do you think? I think it's the same reason that the ALS Association shot down the first version of HR 7071, was because it didn't have money for research in there or whatever. Again, it all goes back to excuses. We're never going to get anything perfect that's legislative because Congress doesn't work that way. It's all negotiated. But there are groups, Craig, that they just don't think the same way as we do as patients. Look at this. I know this is small. I'm gonna post this and I'll read it for you, but this is from the American Academy of Neurology, for gosh sakes. And I just want patients to see how crazy this is. I know you can't read this, but halfway down it says this, quote, talking about intrathecal therapies, which, by the way, is how NurOwn is given, and all the new ASOs like tofersen and stuff. It says the AAN recognizes that intrathecal therapies may be appropriate for new and innovative ALS treatments. However, this delivery mechanism is cumbersome in neurology and presents challenges to physicians and other providers administering these medications. We write to express our concerns about the potential impact of intrathecal therapies on patient access. Now think about that for a second, Craig. That is incredible. And on the back side of that letter, what I don't have on page 2, it actually says and complains that doctors might even have to hire more staff to be able to keep up with the paperwork for these therapies, and then it wasn't feasible. I mean, Craig, this is ALS, and these doctors are talking about intrathecal therapies not being perfect enough. I just want our new members and people to understand that not everybody in ALS has the same desires as you and I do. Not everybody sees this as simple like we do. Here's the neurology guys saying that intrathecals are, we need to watch out. We shouldn't get too deep in there. Even though they might work, it's going to create a whole bunch more work for them, buddy. A whole bunch more paperwork. It's amazing to me that some people think like this. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh no, I'm sitting here thinking, I've had a lumbar puncture done in my local doctor's office.
Right.
No problem. I had 3 of them done in China. No problem. How many patients had them done for the trial?
Right.
With proper preparation, their problems go away.
Yeah, it's not the idea that somebody's going to have to spend. I think they even say in the letter that it's about 30 to 40 hours worth of paperwork for each lumbar puncture. 30 to 40 hours, and that they were worried that they'd have to hire extra staff. I mean, Craig, people are sitting here dying, these agonizing deaths, and that's the letter they're going to send to the FDA, our own neurology. When I showed my own neurologist that letter, first thing he said was, man, that's well, not this letter, but that's a part of the reason why I left him, 6 or 7 years ago. It's just defeatism. Again, defeatism. Look at some of these comments we see. These are from actual patients. Look at this. My mom's doctor dismissed her anytime she asked about trials and medication. I got that same reaction when I brought up NurOwn to Pal's doctor last week. Blah, 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 same thing. I mentioned NurOwn at a clinic, it's just more of the same. I mean, these doctors, they don't even want to prescribe these drugs, Craig. That's the crazy thing about it. I mean, so we like to think as ALS patients, our doctors are busting their butts, doing everything they can, and that people above them at the FDA and the ALS Association and all them, that they're also doing everything they can. The reality is that we're on 2 totally separate planets in terms of speed, urgency, and strategy, right? I mean, there's a big desire to cure this disease. And trust me, I'd love to have a cure. But let's be honest about it. Cancer has no cure still. What do you think the odds are of curing something like ALS? Much more, well, at least as complicated, and on 1/1000th of the budget as cancer. The odds of curing ALS are basically zero. Okay, I hate to say it. But we don't even know what causes ALS in 90% plus of the cases, let alone how to cure it. And yet that's where the majority, it seems like, of the money goes, and the strategy, because they can just kick the can down the road, and meanwhile more and more and more people die. What we need, Craig, is we need a treatment. We need something that can stop this disease. As Dr. Appel said the other night on a great podcast, our webcast, he said, it's funny, he actually used our house fire analogy, the same one that Andy and I used a couple of years ago. Now, who knows, he may have used it first, I don't know. But bottom line is, he used the same analogy. Put out the house fire first, and then go back and call the arson investigator. That's it. We don't need to know what causes ALS right this minute. We need to know how to shut it down. That's what we need. And then there are some promising things that appear to be coming. There was a very promising thing from Ohio State, Wexler, the other day about regrowing motor neurons, human motor neurons. And so within a few years, we may have that capability. But if we keep kicking the can down the road and letting people die like this, it's just, not only is it inhumane, I just think we're better than this as Americans. We hear that phrase a lot. And this is the one case I think it really does apply. These doctors and scientists, they're better than this. And there are doctors out there, man. I want to be clear. There are doctors out there, Craig, who are fighting their butts off for us. You know, at the Healy Center, where I go, Mass General, amazing people. They do everything they can for patients. And there are people out there like that. Really, the issues seem to be more at the local level, Craig. If something's not FDA approved, they either don't know about it or don't care. And to be honest with you, the average ALS patient, at least the members of No More Excuses, are far more educated about the status of each trial and about the results of each trial than the doctors. I mean, doctors they were making statements on their own on the phase 3 trial before the data was even released, the full data. Well, it's still not the full data, but you know what I mean, the presentation and all that stuff. So they hadn't even seen that, and they were already saying, oh, it's a failure or whatever. No, it's not. It's not a failure when you need it, and when it produces a result across 36% of the whole damn trial. It's not a failure. Okay, there was an issue with placebo. Yes, that's true. It sucks. But look, again, this FRS score, it's not good enough. We have to do better, and that's what the problem is. It's the FRS score. And so let's keep moving on here. I know I don't want to go all night. Look, I really don't. I know people. Yeah, go ahead.
And this goes back to our conversation earlier about you not looking like you have ALS. I don't look like I have ALS unless I open my mouth or try to move my arms and legs.
Yep.
What we need, I think, coming up are pictures of people that look bad. I hate to say it, but if you look bad,
You've
and
got to at a certain point.
Use your picture,
Yeah.
please send it to us.
Yeah. No,
Because I do believe ALS is very hard for someone who doesn't have it to grasp. So if you look horrible, please embrace that and allow us to use your photo. If you fall in the floor, God forbid, let someone take your picture and send it to us. I hope that doesn't happen. I've been there. I know how miserable it is. But if you think the picture of you will make an impact on the powers that be, please post it or send it to us.
great point. That's an excellent point, Craig. Yeah, I mean, guys, part of this disease is showing people how jacked up it is to have this damn disease. Look, I mean, it's hard for people to know that. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, you're right. And I know a lot of people watching my videos think that, well, that dude looks fine. Well, no, I'm not. I mean, if I stood up, you'd see what I mean. It's really hard for me to walk. And, you know, we get ALS in different places. And I believe God always has a plan, right, Craig? I mean, maybe the reason that, you know, my voice and my upper body was spared was to help with this fight. And we all, as patients, look, we all have value. Every single person with this disease. That's what pisses me off the most, is the way doctors write us off. Every one of you out there right now, your life matters. It's not written off, man. I'm sorry. I refuse. We refuse to accept that. That as an existential fact, and the truth is not that we are written off. It's not. We do not accept that. That's false logic to us at No More Excuses. Every life has value, and there has to be organizations who are fighting for people like this, who are on the brink and who could be saved. I mean, with access to these drugs, every day matters. Building memories, every single day matters. And if you could slow this disease down, Craig, by 50%, let's say, for all newly diagnosed ALS patients, if there were a drug out there that could slow this down for those people, or even better yet, stop the progression as soon as you're diagnosed, then we have truly hit the jackpot. And then we've got to go back and figure out how to regrow motor neurons. That's next. It is. It's got to be. Because that way, somebody in theory, if you could stop their progression at, like, when they're, say, a 40 or 41 or 42, you could bring them back up to even higher. I mean, who knows? The bottom line is that every life has value, and we are optimistic always. Probably to a fault, but look, we believe this can be done. I've seen these people. Craig, we've met with them. I mean, we've gone to the FDA. We've sat in front of the ALS Association. We know the truth about this disease and where the real flaws are. I've met Dr. Appel. I was a patient of his once. And I've met Larry, or haven't met Larry, but I talked to Sharon for a long time. And she really, I hope she's okay with COVID. I'd love to have her on this week, because people need to know and hear that, like, her husband stopped dying. I mean, those 3 people, the data proves it. It's not me saying this. And you can look at the slope. It's like this, and then it goes like this, and then like this when the trial's over. Okay, that's not an accident. It's success for ALS is what it is. And the fact that that's out there and you can't get to it, none of us can get to it, it's a crime against humanity. It is. I'm sorry. So let's keep pushing, Craig. I want to go on. As you know, guys, we got to have access to these drugs. HR 8662 is the second, actually it's the third bill, Craig, if you remember. Remember the Placebo No More Act? We got that done last year and got no support on it. Nobody supported it. And then Congressman Fortenberry, again, reintroduced HR 7071. Remember that this summer? And thanks to people like Michelle Lorenz, who basically came from outer space and just started kicking butt on these bills.
Absolutely.
I mean, what more can you say? I mean, we got 200 and close to 280 co-sponsors. I want to show you what that looks like on paper. I mean, this is not all of them, but there's 276, Craig. This was October 23rd of this year, or last year, excuse me. Look at this.
No, December 23rd.
276. And you know the really scary part about that, buddy, is that with her help and with you guys out there, No More Excuses and other pages, like Team Stevens and whoever, you know, all these other places, and of course I Am ALS working behind the scenes, happened in record time, almost 3.5 months. That's unheard of. I mean, how long did it take to get that 5-month SSDI bill passed, right? Years.
Oh, years.
And here we are, almost to the verge of having enough to really shake things up in Congress. And we got a couple issues, I'm not going to lie, both sides of the aisle. This is bipartisan as hell. It cannot get any more bipartisan than this. But guys, and this so strong is patient power that when the bill was reintroduced again, and I think this is still 7071, but it came back, as you know, as as HR 8662. After who jumped in there and got it changed, and then took some time to rewrite the bill. And thank you to Congressman Fortenberry and Quigley and Dr. Archer and other people who've gotten this thing done. And now, as you know, we reintroduced it again. They did. And we got another 280 sponsors, Craig, right before Christmas. And we just flat out ran out of time. But
so let's tell people where we are. We're in a lull right now because we are waiting for new bill numbers for the 117th Congress. As soon as we get those new bill numbers, you will know it here first. We have not dropped it. We have not given up. We are simply waiting for new bill numbers. And as soon as they are available, they will be posted on our Facebook page.
Great point, buddy. Thank you so much for making that point. And no, you're absolutely right. Here's actually a brief history of what's happened here. You can see here on the December 18th of 2019, the Placebo No More Act was introduced, and that's a nice name. I like that name, No More, Placebo No More. So, and then again on June 2020, and that one had to be rewritten by our buddies, where. And then the third bill, Craig, again, was HR 8662. So this is the third go at it. It's a good bill. It did change a little bit. Unfortunately, now it's just phase 3 drugs, not phase 2. And there's some other changes to it that took away a little bit of the effectiveness. But look, it's still a good bill. I get it. This is the way DC works. It's a negotiation. I got all that. So the goal is, as soon as this bill is reintroduced, probably by Congressman Fortenberry or Mr. Quigley again, we're going to bust our butts on it again, and we're going to finish it because we'll have time. But like you said, things have got to calm down a little bit. We got all this crap going on in DC right now. It needs to die down a little bit, and then once we get going, a lot of people forget, Craig, and you know this because you've been directly involved in this, how close we came during the middle of a freaking pandemic, like never before. Yeah. 1 in 1,000-year pandemic, right? I mean, and we came, well, maybe not 1,000. That might be stretching the truth a little bit, but I mean, you know what I mean. Look, we went to DC in the middle of a pandemic, but these bills, all of this stuff is stalled, Craig. It got stalled. The EO, all of it, because of crap that was going on in DC. Yeah. ALS once again took a backseat to nonsense, and that's also a problem.
Yeah.
And so, I actually got one more video I'd like to play for you. This is a really nice young lady. Her name is Kaya Klingman, and her dad. She's an actress. She was on a couple of TV shows. Some of you may recognize her, and she was kind enough to do this little video and allow us to make some changes to it. And I'd like to play that for you now. That's like a couple of minutes, but it's really good. It's about her dad, and then we'll come right back. And then we're getting pretty long here in time, so I'll go ahead and close it. We'll close out after this, but here you go. Check this out.
I'm Kaya Klingman, and I am the daughter of an incredible man named James Klingman, who is currently dying of ALS, the disease that has a 100% fatality rate. There is a bill in Congress that needs sponsors from both the House and Senate, and I need your help calling and emailing special committee representatives in your state and district. House Bill 8662 and the Senate Bill 4867. We currently have enough co-sponsors in the House, but desperately need more in the Senate.
Currently, there are new investigational drugs that are showing promise, but people with ALS can't get access to them.
Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis could be a treatable chronic disease if we decide it should be.
It's a yes, you're gonna help us, or no, you're not.
There is a bill in Congress that needs sponsors from both the House and Senate, and I need your help calling and emailing special committee representatives in your state and district. House Bill 8662 and the Senate Bill 4867. We currently have enough co-sponsors in the House, but desperately need more in the Senate. This bill will enable other dying ALS patients gain access to potentially life-saving treatments as soon as 2021.
Matt Bellina, as you know, has had spectacular results.
Visit the link on the screen to access scripts, email templates, and the list of representatives in your state. I really want my dad to have access to this, so I need your help calling before December 15th. That is next Tuesday. Join our Facebook group called No More Excuses to learn even more, and help us continue the fight against ALS.
How about that, buddy? Pretty cool, huh? Kaya's
Very cool.
really cool. She was, and actually, I think the connection came again through an incredible woman, as you know, who's been fighting with Michelle and the Saxinas. You know, Mayuri. Wow, I mean, boy, she came out of nowhere last year. No, I mean, amazing.
Phenomenal.
And, you know, I just when I think about Mayuri, what I think of is somebody who, as you know, Craig, is pretty well progressed. She's fully progressed, and she's fighting harder than any of us, you or I combined. I mean, it's amazing what she's done.
She is a force for sure.
Yes, she is. She is a force, and her brother is very smart, and they are kicking butt along with Michelle. And I'll leave 8662, and I'll leave this bill here at this place before we finish out. But we're going to get this done. Patients are going to make history. We're going to pass this bill, and it will provide expanded access, money to fund these new treatments like AMX 35 and others. Now, of course, AMX 35, if it goes to phase 3, unfortunately, it won't be eligible for that. But, if we'd already had this bill, it would be. Because a lot of people have been asking the company, when are you going to do expanded access? Same thing for Biogen. Now, I think there's limitation on the size of the company, and there are, you know, like anything else, there's always small fine print. But the bottom line is, Craig, is that, look, if we get this bill passed, it's going to open new doors for ALS treatment funding, and that's what we have to have. You know, millions and millions of dollars to pay for treatments. And like Congressman Fortenberry said in his speech, it's a treatment bill. It's not a research bill. And for once, I mean, now it is because it got changed. I think there's money in there for research, but before it was a pure treatment bill. And see, again, it's a diversion between patients, what they want, and what the ALS community wants. You know, the ALS research community, what we call the ALS fundraising complex, if you will, and what patients want. We want access, we want treatments. They've got a different thing on their mind. They're thinking long term, Craig. And look, I get it. I mean, it's job security, right? But the bottom line is, until we get that first therapy, then we're going to struggle. You know, just like AIDS, HIV. Once it got AZT, it blew the door open. And now, today, HIV/AIDS is really, I'm not going to say no big deal because that's not accurate, but does anybody think of Magic Johnson?
A little more than it can be.
Yeah, I mean, Craig, does anybody think of Magic Johnson as having AIDS anymore? I don't. I mean, it's totally treatable at this point, which is amazing. And that's with all these drugs, that we've seen. Let's take one last look again before we get out of here. But look at this. Arimoclomol, AMX 35, Radicava, Neuron, Tregs, Rapa, Riluzole, Copper ATSM, Masinib, Tofersen, NSI 566, Astro. Now, not all of those drugs, buddy, are that far along, but some of them are just simple powdered compounds like Copper ATSM. That drug in phase 1 slowed ALS by 70%. 70. Now, how about that? And the developer even said, and he's going to regret saying this, but he said, quote, like, I shouldn't say quote, a paraphrase, but this is pretty much what he said, that it's not some expensive compound that costs $100,000. Whoops, shouldn't have said that. Right? So we've got to finish 8662. We've got to get access to these bills. And I invite all of you to please watch this week. Every night, we're going to focus on a couple new drugs and we're going to educate you about what's closest. And I couldn't do them in order because people had different schedules and stuff, but we've got great interviews coming this week. You're going to keep hearing more from some of these people in these actual trials. We're going to present the data again in a very short format. We're going to show you what drugs are close and what drugs are still a ways away. There is, and contrary to what you have heard or whatever, there is no cure for ALS, quote, right around the corner. Okay, look, if that's the case, then somebody show me what it is, because that's not the case. Not even these ASOs, like SOD1 drug tofersen, appears to be curing ALS. Craig, we are years away from a cure for ALS, okay? But what we could have is a functional cure, meaning that if somebody's diagnosed with ALS, they start getting these treatments and they just don't progress, either at all or much. That's a functional cure. To me, it would be. So that's where we are. We've got to know these drugs first so that you can then go into your doctors and ask for them. And we're going to give you some letters. We're going to show you the petitions. We're going to update you on all of that and where each drug is in the process. That's what we're going to do this week. And that way, Craig and all of our members, we don't have to keep bashing all this out on the website, you know, because we are getting new members constantly. And thank you for that. If you're new, it's great. Please, thanks for joining. Go out and please solicit some other people. We don't fundraise. We don't ask you for money. We don't sell your information. Craig might, to the people that sell you those extended warranties, because I'm getting like 85 calls an hour for my car warranty. So let me leave you guys with a little teaser here. Again, we're going to talk about all drugs, but I want you to hear just a little bit of a tease from my latest interview, and then we'll say one last word and we'll get out of here. So here you go.
My left wrist, my wrist drop gone. Wow. So basically, according to the ALS FRS ABC score, from January to January, a year ago I was at 34. Today I'm at a solid 36. So I've had, arguably, I've had zero progression.
All right, we'll just leave it there. Well,
Wow.
You know, we'll talk to Scott again at some point. That full interview is fantastic, and you know, he was smart. He kept his own data, just like others have, like Phil Green, who's on record as saying he kept his own data with the PMP program through ALS TDI, kept his own numbers. You don't get those in the trial, obviously. You know, we don't. When we were in the neurone trial, they don't give that out. That's top secret info. And so, but a lot of people kept their own data, and you know, I did too. There's some information in there. I'm on record, guys. Like you'll hear more from Scott, but look, my own breathing was up. You know, a matter of points, 11 points. So call it what you want. It could be placebo. I don't know, but you know, guys, look. I've tried to stay out of I tried not to talk about my own situation because I already catch enough flack and all that. But look, the bottom line is this: ALS should be treatable right now. There's a number of drugs, and I personally am excited about AMX35. I think it's going to be a great weapon in the arsenal. I do. I think any drug that can slow ALS down by 40%, got to have it immediately. Got to have it. Copper ATSM, again, another one. And then we've got RAPA and Tregs. Tregs stopped ALS in 3 out of 3 people. I don't know what's better than that. And so, Craig, as we sign off here, sorry we ran over, guys, but there's so much to talk about in this crazy disease. You know, there's just so much to talk about. And
I want to add something before
go ahead, buddy.
you get people. To our audience, if things progress a certain way, it's okay. If things progress a certain way, we may have to go back to DC. If we do, come on up, baby.
Thank you, Daddy.
If we do, please do everything
Yep.
within your power to be there. I promise you, you will meet some of the best people. I can't wipe my nose. You will meet some of the best people you have ever met.
No doubt
It
about it.
will be the most heartwarming event
Yep.
you have ever attended.
Absolutely.
So if we get to that point,
Sure.
bring her up high. If we get to that point to where we go back to DC, please do everything within your power
That's
to
right.
be there. There is tremendous strength in numbers. And my beautiful baby wants to say hi. She's been very good.
Oh,
Say hi, Sophia. Please
Now-
say hi.
now she's camera shy. Oh, there she is.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to add that, Mike.
Okay, sounds good, brother. I love you. Thanks for doing what you do.
Love you too.
I'm going to do this sign off now, and I'll talk to you again soon. Stay out of that Crown Royal and Gig of Maggie's, right?
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, brother. See ya.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I've already taken up so much of your time. Thank you. This is almost hour and 45 minutes. I apologize. I try to keep these things short. There's just no way. This is a complex issue. I really do want to say thank you. If you are new to this group, thanks for joining. We're going to be starting our third year pretty soon here, troublemaking as we call it. We've been referred to as rock throwers by some of the people in this business, and all I can say is I totally agree with that. That's what we do. We're not here to use the traditional means. We are a group that is focused on results, and because we have to be. Unless we are, we're just not going to get this disease pushed forward for people in time, like you. Anybody watching this right now, please have hope. That's what I want you to leave this week with, is that this battle is not over. Your life is not over. You have value. Everybody does. And it's not because these drugs do not exist. 5-10 years ago, yeah, ALS, it was a lost cause. It was. But we're in a different boat right now. This is not your daddy's ALS, as they say. This is something different. This is treatable. It could be if we choose it. If we choose to stop making the excuses, and as all of you know, I don't have to tell you, that's the reason why we chose this name. So I want to say thank you so much. We'll see you every night this week. We'll be back again here 8 o'clock tomorrow night as we start our first discussion about these drugs right here. Okay, these are the ones that are on par for tomorrow night. Take a quick look at them. Well, I say that. Actually, I'm sorry, that's not right. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. They're on there. They're on the website. I'll put them up and make sure you see. But they're on the header. These are all the drugs that we're going to eventually talk about. Sorry, got ahead of myself there. So with that said, I'm out of here. Thank you all so much. See you mañana.